Hello everybody, my name is Spoons Rattling, and welcome to another video where today we are covering the topic of free Wargear. One of the slightly bigger changes that came to 10th edition was the removal of Wargear costing any points. And I'm here to tell you that that isn't actually a change that matters at all, for one simple reason. There is always a best way to run a unit. It does not matter what the Wargear costs or if it doesn't cost anything. There will always be a best way to run a unit. Now you may be wondering what I mean, so we're going to go through a handful of examples, and there's plenty more I could have picked, but we're just going to stick to these ones just so this video isn't 17 hours long, showing why free Wargear really doesn't matter and is not something that would change the balance of the game in any noticeable way. We're going to start off with Space Marines, of course, Devastators, the heavy weapon infantry, one of the more iconic units in their Firstborn lineup. Now the Devastators are a hugely customizable unit. They have 6 different heavy weapons they can take. The Sergeant's super customizable. I mean, surely, these all costed different points. You know, the Heavy Bolter was 5 points. The Grav Cannon was 10. The Multi-Bolter was 20. The Las Cannon was 15, and so on. And then you realize, oh, that doesn't matter because people only brought Grav Cannons and Multi-Meltas. And before you get on my case, like, oh, I didn't do that, I'm talking about in competitive sense, because in a casual sense you can bring whatever you want. There's much less optimization just to be expected in casual games. But I mean, just look at how Devastators were used. Maybe Las Cannons, they were considered mediocre in that role, and their best role was just multi-meltas and Grav Cannons jumping out of a drop pod. And what did Space Marines run in the later half of the editions? Again, Devastators in a drop pod with Grav Cannons and multi-meltas. They just outclassed literally everything else, point for point, and otherwise they were just better weapons. Let's keep going with another classic Space Marine unit. Vanguard Veterans, one of the terrors of 9th edition, one of the most powerful Space Marine units for the entire edition, through every change. And the Vanguard are very similar to the Devastators. They have 8 different melee weapons. And then you realize that they always bring the jump pack, they always bring storm shields, and they 99% of the time just bring a lightning claw. Maybe a Thunderhammer or even a Relic Blade if you're feeling real spicy. But, again, it is just the same unit with all these different weapons at different points cost that ends up using the exact same thing every time because there is just a best way to use a unit, objectively. Now, here's one of the ones where I'm gonna concede a little bit. The Chaos Terminators were an absolute power combo when they came out, being nearly unkillable, and there were 2 ways to run them. Do you save 30 points and not bring Power Fists at the cost of a lot of their damage? Or do you pay slightly more since you're already paying so much to have them do a lot of damage? And when the Codex came out, there was some debate for either, and then the points hike happened and you realized you had to go all in on Terminators because they cost too much, and then the accursed weapons were left by the wayside, and Power Fists and Chain Fists completely took over. Once again, even when they were balanced, GW slipped up, nerfed the wrong thing, and then obliterated the other use for them. So, once again, points-costed gear did nothing. We have perhaps the worst case of it with the Tau Hammerhead. The Hammerhead was one of the most feared weapons in 9th, despite being outclassed by broadsides, but for the most part, this is one of the greatest examples of pointed wargear being completely pointless because the Ion Cannon, which is a worst weapon in pretty much every single way compared to the Railgun, for some reason costed 10 points more for a weapon that was just objectively worse than the Railgun. It is baffling how little these points actually matter. I'm just being honest. And don't worry, we're not done yet. We have one more example, Wraith Blades. Now, Wraith Blades were one of the only units that were truly durable for the Eldar. And they had 2 loadouts. One was cheaper and the other was more expensive. And would you be surprised that even though their main purpose was durability, everyone always bought the Ghost Axe and Shield despite being 5 points more expensive? So, what do we see here? The fact is, Wargear cost doesn't even play a factor into this. There are 2 ways you play a unit. Maxed out with all the upgrades that make them good, or min-sized with absolutely nothing. And in 10th, instead of having min-sized squads with absolutely nothing, making them essentially just dead weight, they can maybe bring a weapon, a special weapon. You know, the things they include in their kits were 9 times out of 10 they're awful and weren't worth bringing because they costed too many points. But now you don't really have to worry about that because you're not actively detrimenting your unit by bringing them. Now you may be saying, but now I can't run a naked squad if I don't want to. Well, what do you want to run as a naked squad? tactical marines, maybe, if you just want 5 bolter guys. I mean, the thing is, their special weapon is 1 shot usually, so it's not that big of a change, not that big of a trade-off if you just want to bring a bolter just to not worry about it. And the same thing applies to every other unit. I seriously don't understand why people act like pointed Wargear is like the silver bullet to loadout imbalance when there isn't one. They've done a lot to tighten that up. Another change people dislike, the cursed weapons, just infinitely better than having 6 different power weapons that all of them sucked. Instead, having them all be one profile so you're not punished for modeling your Chaos Terminator with a cool axe, for example. Regardless, I have been Spoons Rattling. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.